minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, friends. Welcome to a nice little special CitizenCon review episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast. I'm your host, Space Tomato, and today I have brought in 10-pound extraordinaire. I don't have a nickname, I'm sorry. 10Pound42 is come on the show a few times, and I think we've tended from kind of going about towards performance and stability talks more towards generalized stuff. And I don't want to say that sort of matches your content, but I feel like you've also been doing a lot more of the generalized content. And you got out a super lightning fast review of CitizenCon. I know you watched the whole thing, and I know you're going to have a lot to say about it. So I wanted to have a nice little hour-long, maybe a little longer, summary on what we saw and what actually we specifically did not see, and what this kind of stuff is telling us about Star Citizen in the near term, potentially next year, what this tells us about what CIG has been working on throughout the year and what they just kind of revealed to us with this show. So thank you for joining me so quickly on this weekend after CitizenCon. How are you doing?
I am doing well. It's been a fun few days, you'd say, for Star Citizen. Lots of like surprises, and maybe some disappointments as well. But that probably sums up the whole journey of this game, probably, doesn't it? Surprises and disappointments. But yeah, no, a lot to talk about. So yeah.
That's just the name of the game every single year. Surprises, it's like just peaks and troughs, surprises and disappointments. I would say that this year, maybe not so much surprises because like expectations have gone up and the game didn't really keep pace, but this year it does feel like there has at least been less disappointments. Not let's put aside features. We'll get to that. But like in terms of the way that CIG has handled themselves, they've had some kerfuffles. Okay, we don't need to bring them up, but they've certainly had their moments this year. But it feels like they've done a lot better at maintaining their composure as a company, and this CitizenCon feels kind of like an extension of that. What is your thoughts of overall what this show or what this 2-hour segment they did tells you about where they are as a company?
Oh, it's a good question. So as a company, yeah. So in some ways, it was because in my head, just because of the name, I always have in my head the idea of a Nintendo Direct, which is very like, I suppose, kind of culturally very kind of Japanese, quite kind of like rigid, quite here's some stuff, bang, 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 and it kind of felt like that. Apart from the kind of Jared Link sections, which were just like classic Jared, which
interludes.
Some people hate. Yeah. Some people hate it, some people love it. I don't. Sometimes I feel one way, sometimes I feel the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely felt like when it's all pre-recorded, it just gives them the ability to really kind of nail probably what they want to say, which probably means that we should read into some of the things they did say. And there's a few things I think that I've watched it through a second time today, and there's some things in there that I missed on the first time through that I think are quite significant. So yeah, there's loads to talk about here, but yeah, I wonder if they'll stick to this next year. That's an interesting question. I don't know what people think, but I think they might prefer doing it direct rather than doing it live, because it just allows them to say what they want to say and not get caught up in anything else. And obviously doesn't take as much time for the devs, costs lots of money to put on live one. It'll be interesting to see what they do, at least.
It's actually interesting to me that we didn't do it live, yet it felt like there was still fluff in there to kind of keep the pacing at and I'm not gonna lie, stretch it a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
That was interesting to me.
Yeah, they didn't need all of the Jared bits. I think people would have been happier if they were just a bit shorter. It did feel like you're stretching this out, and why is that? Because you haven't got much to show. What's going on? Yeah.
It's not so much that I'm like opposed to having fun. I like the enjoyment and fun of it. But especially this year when I don't want to say tensions are high, but expectations kind of are. I will fully take some of the blame for setting a little higher expectations based on how quiet they've been the rest of the year. And I think that
Yeah.
was there were two possibilities, right? There was either this CitizenCon showed more of what they've been doing this year, which is a focus on content, quiet on features, or it gives us a window into this development that they are not telling us about throughout the year. Unfortunately, it became the latter, and
Yeah.
I think that disappoints a lot of people, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, it really depends on how you look at. There's so many angles to this. It's crazy. Like, there's the angle of, like, somebody put on one of the comments. They were like, it was the best ISC ever, but the worst CitizenCon ever.
Yeah,
That's not a bad summary of it in some
yeah,
ways. You've got the angle of, was it worth gutting ISC all year for this? That's an angle. You've got an angle of where are the features, and then you've got the angle of, like, if you want to play the game. Well, people who want to play the game regularly, the future over the next 12 months looks great. There's loads of content going. But if you want to follow the game's drive towards 1.0, you've got to rely on just a few vague statements from Rich Tyler and Chris. Like, there's so many bits to unpick in some ways,
yeah.
and they go in different directions. Some are positive, some are negative, depending on how you look at it. It was a really interesting event.
Yeah, I think it's one to digest for a little while. There's, like you said, there are little things in there that may have been mentioned that I think are possible crumbs of stuff that happens in the future.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's pre-recorded, so I want to read more into them, but not so much. Like, there was one point where they mentioned that they wanted to change the way that resources were spawning based around how they've changed their rock scattering, and I'm like, okay. See, now that could be significant for mining, because this means that maybe the rocks that are used for mining are not different from the rocks of everything else on the planet. It could. There's a lot of ways you could read into the things that were announced here, and that's usually a bad idea when it comes to Star Citizen. But it also, again, it feels like they're more competent, and the things that they're saying at least are being held more cautious, right? Did you feel like this show had the same bombastic sort of, like, trying to impress the audience that the CitizenCon normally does?
Not in the way that they normally do it. So obviously, normally it's like, bang, here's a load of features that we're gonna like. Obviously, the best example in some ways was last year's look at space stations, something that they may not mention for another 5-10 years. Like, who knows when they'll eventually go in. But that's like here's a peek into the dream of this game long term, and they didn't really do anything like that this year. It was all quite short term in terms of the next year, from all the content. I mean, the most bombastic thing was them just turning around and saying Nix is coming next month. I mean, that was
That was
pretty
the first
crazy.
thing. They opened with the
Yeah,
biggest deal.
yeah, and they potentially, from a kind of flow point of view, if they'd ended with that, I wonder if people might have felt a bit different about it, because it started with that, and then it kind of slowed and kind of ground to a bit of a halt as it kind of went on, and it kind of fizzled out a bit. So it was almost like a wedding that just went on, and
God.
could have ended a bit earlier.
There's a reference. Um,
Yeah.
why do you think that is? Like, what? It kind of would make sense to talk about the faction. Like, when they did CitizenCon, I think 2021, it's either 21 or 22. They covered a lot of the stuff in Pyro, the space stations, the outposts, the
Yeah.
factions. And then at the end of the whole CitizenCon, you kind of got this feeling that they were going to finish it up with, like, and you'll get to experience all that next year. Because the whole time you
Yeah.
have people going, this sounds great, but when? Okay, that's cool, but
Yeah.
when? You're telling me this is great, but when? And then to finish all that with next month, it's a mic drop moment. It's kind of interesting that they opened with that.
Yes, it was. It was interesting, and I mean, ultimately, this is. Sometimes you think, you talk about how, like, almost professional, more competent they're coming, but they are, but basically just a bunch of people trying to do their best. And I think there'll be mistakes that they make every year that they might look back on and be like, well, that seems quite obvious now. We wouldn't do that again.
Hmm.
I mean, in some ways, it doesn't really matter. I think the fact that Nix is coming in next month was a shock in a really positive way. I mean, maybe we should talk about the fact that whilst that's really good, they kind of then they went on to say that, well, actually, it's coming in very bare bones, and they at one point even compared it to Pyro and said, well, unlike Pyro, it's going to come in quite bare bones, and then we're going to build on it over the year. It's like, well, hang on a minute. Pyro is still bare bones, so what does this even mean for Nix? What's even going to happen? So the plans they had for content throughout the year looked really good, but there's some interesting things of how is this actually. I mean, the planets aren't coming, or the planet. They got one planet they're working on. The second one was just concept art, and the third one's a gas giant. So really, the question is, what does this next year look like? And it will be more content from the sounds of things. But I guess one question is, are we going to be in a similar scenario with Nix as we are with Pyro now, where Pyro is now so kind of unpopular that they've reduced the amount of shards right down, or servers per shard right down to 3. Nobody really goes. Well, a lot of people don't go there. Some people have never been there. Will there be enough in Nix to actually for people to go there, apart from maybe this first kind of mission event thing that they're talking about? So there's lots of questions.
Yeah, Nix is an interesting subject because our expectations on it have also changed with the way the game has. If we were all, when let's say going back to 2020, 2021, around the time when people were expecting Pyro to start coming in soon, there would be a lot of like Pyro and Nix, and generally the explanation of that would be, oh, well, Delamar was already done. It's been in the game. They just have to update it. The rest of the system is just a couple dead planets and an asteroid belt and a gas cloud. So when you would ask people, well, what is Nix? Like, they're going to bring in the Nix system. What is that? Most of the time, people would just be like, it's a big landing zone, which has already been done. And then it's some other stuff that, like, you know, will be used for gameplay. So you could continue to look at it like that, what our expectations for Nix were. Nix 1 did not matter. So bringing Nix into the game in November with a focus on Levski and the asteroid belt is kind of like already the Nix we were expecting. Now, I'm not justifying the fact that they're not dropping it incomplete. I think that's annoying. It sounds like it's going to be constructed kind of how Stanton has been. I'd love to see the star systems come in complete, and when they kind of emphasize the fact that the planets were coming later, yeah, that was disappointing, because it makes for like a really good, in a perfect world, a good drop with base building, and then everybody's going into Nix and like getting their bases and stuff. That would have been great. But I'm more interested in, I think there are some easy wins that they could get with Nix. I think the asteroid belt could be really good if they introduced a couple of exclusive resources out there. Yeah, and they started focusing a little bit more on like making Nix a really, really lucrative industrial system, but then maybe they made it so that the sell prices of all of the resources from Nix had to be sold in Stanton. So then they could kind of balance that with like the Hull C stuff that they're trying to emphasize and more interstellar cargo hauling. So I feel like there's some easy wins that they don't need to do all this narrative content for. Question is, are they going to do it? As always.
Well, yeah, it does look as though their plan for the foreseeable future is the narrative content. That is their driving force. It almost seems like the amount of content, mission content, event content that they showed us in this event, and then they said, well, that's not. I think at one point Jared said, you might be saying, why are you spoiling everything? And he's like, well, that isn't everything. That's not all we've got. So it does seem as though maybe due to the success of this year from a financial point of view, they've made so much money this year, partly because of the in-game content, partly because of the ship sales that they've ramped up. They seem to be, I imagine there's been a meeting where they've sat around, the marketing people and the money people have said, what we're doing is good. Let's just keep doing what we're doing, and we're going to make loads of money. And
that's how we got into our previous situation, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but at least they would argue that they are people, so they said that player count was up and play time was up and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the numbers didn't sound crazy.
Dude, I
up
want to hear them.
for-
Tell us what
Yeah,
your daily
exact.
freaking average numbers are. Like, give us
Yeah.
something about the health of the community. They did it one time, like 3 or 4 years ago,
Yes.
and
Well,
I would like to know.
I don't think they were going to. I think that was a one-off. I think until they're outstanding, I don't think they'll want to share them because as a company, as you said before, as they've become more kind of corporate in some ways or professional, however you want to look at it, they're wanting to appear successful, even when they're not necessarily. And I think you might say that their concurrent numbers now aren't. If people knew them, they might be slightly embarrassed by them. I don't know.
I think
we could see, but
I think they're higher than they have been in the last couple of years, but I don't think they're
Yeah,
as
yeah.
high as they were in like 2022. I think it was. It was like their big breakout year when a ton of people were joining up, and that's not bad. It's how it is. It's that
Yeah.
whole argument that people have that they don't want to complete the game because they make more money this way, and you're like, well, think about how many people are going to want to play it when it's actually a finished product. It's insane. It's crazy the scale
Yeah.
of how that changes.
For sure. Just to cycle back to one thing you just mentioned, you talked about you prefer it if they brought in systems all complete. I think this potentially what they're doing here is going to be the model going forward for Castra and Terra because it gives them so many kind of easy wins in terms of if we're saying that they're all about content, it's ideal to drop in a system and then just build on it throughout the year. More drops of content, more missions, things that people will do to keep that concurrency up, and therefore for people to spend more money on spaceships. So I wouldn't be shocked if this rollout of Nix continues into things like Castra and Terra because it just gives them easy things to put in a patch, and it seems as though that's their strategy is to drop content patches as much as they can, and off the back of that sell as many ships as they can. So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if this was the future for the game for a while.
I mean, you just laid it out earlier in the podcast here. They realize it's working. It's working big.
Yeah.
Like they're making good money, and if they're turning around and seeing they see that, okay, regular ship sales of real ships, not concepts, regular content drops of new locations and storylines, and a playable game are all keeping the money up. Why don't we figure out how to modularize that to fit the star systems being added? Yeah, they did it throughout Stanton this year, right? That was the Stanton year.
Yeah.
Maybe next year is the Nix Pyro year. Like they're splitting it up. It doesn't have to be rigid. But I think, yeah, you're right about that, and it makes a lot of sense. It's like what they said at the show yesterday. They want to build it with us next year. Lets them test stuff. Lets them get easy wins. It's as long as there's still feature stuff going on. That's what they missed. They kind of sprinkled crafting on us a little bit to sort of be like, here, take it and shut up. You got something, but. There are a lot of features that would make all this content make way more sense and be more easy to take part in if it existed.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a big. We can spend probably quite a lot of time talking about this. I mean, it is almost a kind of fight between this game being a theme park MMO, which is what they're pushing more into now, where you as the player, you travel between all these big set pieces, all these mission content bits, you do them, and you say, well, this was fun, and then it's kind of like a WoW sort of comparison. Content is created for you that you run through, versus obviously the sandbox style, which maybe something more like Eve, where it's just like you've got this wide open universe, you do what you want, you can do all sorts of stuff, it's up to you to completely define your own gameplay. And for a long time, CIG would talk about emergent gameplay being such a real, that you couldn't almost go more than a few weeks without somebody from CIG saying, we just love the emergent gameplay that emerges in this game. Emergent gameplay, what a wonderful thing. But they've just gone, they've just slid to the other side and said, we're going to fully build out the theme park. And some people really love that side of things, and some people really love the sandbox side of things. The sandbox is completely dependent on the features,
Yeah.
Like the sandbox only works if they get more features in. As a sandbox game right now, it's so lacking. But as CIG have discovered, if they just carry on with the theme park side, then they can put that content out and it's successful, as we just said. So
Yeah.
obviously this game is ultimately aiming to be a sand park or a theme box. I don't know.
Box.
Whatever, a theme box. It's aiming to do both. And they've talked about that in the 1.0 vision. Rich talked about the idea that they want all of these things. They want the instance content, they want it all. But you have to, based on what they've shown us this whole year and then what they've shown us talking for next year, have to say that they're heavily moving towards the theme park for now.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because the features aren't ready.
Yeah. So, and with the instancing, I think that obviously the focus on instancing tells that to a lot of people as well. It makes that sort of thing easier. I think this is a whole segment of the game that actually it probably deserves its own podcast episode to talk about, because it's one of those constant debates of Star Citizen, PvP versus PvE, NPC led missions versus all player economy. Should it be a sandbox or a theme park? Should it have, it's all kinds of stuff, all freaking kinds of stuff. And I think that what ends up happening with this game, or games in general maybe, is like we start moving in a direction where they handle this kind of stuff. Clearly they're moving more towards the narrative stuff, the theme park stuff. But do you think that they would actually just ditch the sandbox and like the features they've talked about that work with it? Or do you think that it's just a period of time where they are focusing on getting at least a foundation? I'll let you answer and then I'll say my bit.
Yeah. I mean, that is the 800 and however many $1 million question in some ways, isn't it? Because again, what they're doing now is so successful from their point of view. Jared obviously pains to say this has been the best year ever for Star Citizen. I would, if the problem is, so many people are here because of the sandbox, and the sandbox was the dream of the game for such a long time. It's only really in the last few years where they've pushed more into the theme park. I think people would go ballistic if they slowly dropped their plans for things like base building and I mean, the only scary thing might be that the vision for crafting that's coming in is so tiny now. They've reduced it right down in scope just to be FPS weapons and armor and stuff. You could say that there is a chance that as time goes on, some of the vision for 1.0 they might reduce to make it more feasible and deliverable. But I really hope not. I'm here much more for the sandbox than the theme park. I mean, I'll play these missions, all the stuff that they showed. I'll go and run a load of stuff versus Vanduul ships, and I'll enjoy that. But for me, the dream of this game is based on the sandbox stuff. I want to build my own base, probably on Nick's one, because it looked amazing. But I really hope they don't. It's way too early for anything like that to happen. But that isn't what they were saying. They weren't saying, and let me make it clear, by doing more theme park stuff, they're not saying we're not going to do sandbox stuff. I think that's just what they're focusing on now because it's working for them right now. But if they were to drop the sandbox, I think people would go nuts. What do you think?
Well, that's what people are believing already. It's almost like the combat stuff,
Yeah.
right? There's been a lot of combat. Obviously, they focus a lot on combat in Star Citizen. We both know a big part of why that is the case, but you'll see regular discussion every time I go into a thread that's talking in some way about the direction of the game. Excuse me. You'll have people who believe full-heartedly that this is just becoming a combat game. And
yeah,
I understand if you're in a specific mindset or visibility range of the game, like you don't touch in every time you see the major trailers. That definitely tells you that it's all combat focused, because that's the exciting marketing stuff that they do. And then you see them talk about Nyx and having mining, and well, mining is dangerous. Okay, people are going to be attacking me. This is another lawless system. And if the information is not clear and in the game, then it's hard to get out of the mindset, that spiral of like, it feels like everything is focusing on combat. this must be becoming just about combat. So I could see the same way that
Yeah.
would hit people when they feel like there's no features being added. It's all narrative. It's all theme park related, sort of org focused stuff, as some people will say, and thinking they'll never turn the corner on that. I do understand the worries, especially like you said, how they might simplify it a bit or water it down or cut back on some features for 1.0. You know, I just put out the video saying there's no way they're going to make 2028, and if they do make 2028, then we should be worried about the mechanics, because that means they've probably cut things back. So I'm definitely with you there, but we know they're working on like hacking per se, right? And we know hacking is going to work with engineering. We know there will be derelict space stations that we can just come across, or regular space stations, and that those will have some kind of engineering with them. Maybe it's a bit of a stretch for me to then think there will be like sandbox opportunities for us to play with the engineering systems on space stations and stuff. But I look at the stuff that we know they're working on, and even if it's taking a god awful long time, it's got to be useful in some way, right? In the future, like we know there's going to be open space, and the game is never going back to that original sort of everything is an instance vision. There's still going to be this open, free to explore and travel through space. So I guess maybe it's a little naive for me to just be like, they have to put stuff in there.
Yeah. Oh, it's hard. I mean, the only thing you can do, probably the right way to look at this is to say that they did this year and last year talk about their vision for 1.0. Last year they laid out a whole thing which set out a game that included all of this stuff, both sandbox and theme park stuff. And this year, Rich Tyra came on screen and said nothing has changed from our vision for 1.0. And so, yeah, you're right. People will look at what they see in front of them. They'll look at what's coming into the game like immediately each patch and say, well, it's all been combat, it's all been this. But then, for example, last year there was a load of combat stuff, and then we had a whole massive mission about cargo. And so you can't just look at what's immediately in front of you. You have to look at what they've said. You have to look at what they're still saying, probably more importantly, because what they've said can change. But if Rich is saying in that little segment he had, he was almost like defending instancing in that section, which we can talk about in a minute. But he also was saying the vision is still the same, nothing has changed. And so, like you say, it's happening eventually. We just kind of have to wait. I don't think it's time for complete panic stations around the vision of the game. But people will say on the instancing thing, well, they'll just say, well, all we're going to be doing with open space and the sandbox is traveling from instance contents to instant content. But again, that isn't the vision that they've laid out for the game. They've laid out that it will incorporate both instant stuff and open stuff, PvE, and they've laid it all out. So, yeah, just look what he said. That's all you can do, really.
Well, do you think that was him getting ahead of the kind of inevitable reaction that they thought people might have with not showing features?
Feature stuff.
Or I guess just the 1.0 stuff, really, that they showed last year.
Yeah, I think they probably knew, looking at their kind of plan or their edit, they probably had this edited fairly far in advance. Jared has been working on this for months, more than half a year, long time. So they probably knew what they were covering, and they probably knew the community. I wonder whether they watch everybody's prediction videos and they go, pants, they're all way off. We better say something. Yeah. Because everyone's like, they're definitely going to show baseball. They're definitely going to do a big, and then they're like,
we're like, no, engineering for sure. They're like,
I think everybody thought they were showing engineering, and I think Jared, I saw a tweet earlier of him saying, well, we've shown it loads before, why would we show it again? It's like, I mean, well, people still expected it.
we've seen it plenty, but we still have not seen it play out like in a real gameplay environment. I think CIG misses that needs to happen at some point. It can't be excuse me, the gameplay that we do can't just be something that like we make up. It can be. I don't want to, that sounds wrong. We should be coming up with our own way of doing things because we're players and we break stuff and it's insane. But I feel like they should also give us some kind of a demo of the gameplay that they have planned and like talk about what they want or expect players to do in certain situations, because then it might affect how we test those things, but at least it guarantees that everybody's starting on the same page, kind of.
Yeah, I completely agree. But let me just pause you for 1 second. I've just had this crazy idea
Okay.
that CIG, they could have a weekly video show where they show us what they're working on in development, things like engineering, and they could talk about that in a weekly video show. They could
I
even
don't
call
know,
it something
man.
like Inside Star Citizen, maybe. They could do
No,
that.
that doesn't
They
sound
could show
that
us.
that sounds too communicative. I think instead I would
Maybe.
say cut that whole idea down to 1 week a year, and then just extend it by a little bit longer. And maybe we could call it, I don't know, Inside Star Citizen Direct. Maybe,
Yeah, maybe.
maybe that's
Yeah,
what
I
we just.
mean,
This was Inside Star
I,
Citizen Direct.
it kind of was, wasn't it? It kind of was. And there's a whole argument about whether that's been a good thing for this year. We probably don't need to do that now. But I did suddenly think, coming out of this CitizenCon, I suddenly started to think, I wonder if they're gonna actually do some Inside Star Citizen, looking at some of the feature stuff that they haven't shown us, because it's so noticeable, the lack of anything. I just thought, well, surely there's something to show us. Let's pause 1 second on that. Let me read you what they actually said, because this is the thing that I went through a second time and I picked out. Let me just pull up my notes.
All right.
This is what Rich Tara said. This is all feature stuff. Now, there's a bit from Chris and there's a bit from Rich. So Rich, in his section, he said this bit: I wanted to dispel a myth right here, right now. Features are still being worked on quite heavily, whatever quite heavily, in the background, from radar and scanning FPS, the new quantum, to inventory, engineering, and crafting. And all of these features, these are his exact words, I checked this, and all of these features are coming very, very soon for players to get their hands on. What on earth does very, very soon? Again, remember, they've
Hold on.
pre-recorded this.
I think we could just go back about 365 days and probably find out what very, very soon means. For a lot of people, it's going to sound like not until after the next CitizenCon.
I would argue that because they've pre-recorded this, I would say that makes me suddenly think maybe something is coming that we've got no idea about,
Don't
because
do it, Dave.
he's mentioned all of
Don't-
those.
Don't give yourself
I did
hope.
it about Nyx. I made a video about Nyx like a week ago. It was like, I wonder if it's great. I wonder if somehow it's going to just come this year, and it did. So I'm going to just go. I've lost it now. I'm going to just go full on. But
All the
but
years
it
of
doesn't end there.
disappointments, now you got surprised once and you're
Exactly.
going
Yeah.
full on.
I've lost it. I've completely lost it. But it isn't just that. Let me read you this. This is from Chris at the end. Again, I think this got missed. Of course, we're not going to spoil everything that's currently in progress, and many features we haven't discussed today are in active development, like base building, social, and trade tools. I think they're the three that they knew everybody really wanted to see. And they're very much a priority. These, so again, this is exactly what he said. These, so he said base building, social, and trade tools. These, along with bringing the final polished features from Squadron 42 into the persistent universe, will make the next year the most exciting yet for Star Citizen.
Stop the madness.
That's both of them. That's both Rich saying they're coming very, very soon, and that's Chris saying they're coming in the next year on pre-recorded. This isn't like Chris is just on stage going, woo, the vibes are going. I'm just going to throw some dates out there. This is pre-recorded teleprompter, because you can see Jared was using a teleprompter as well. They have worded this stuff to say tons of feature stuff is coming in the next year / very, very soon.
Man, you know what everyone's
do we
going to
do
say
with
to
that?
that? You know what everyone's... It's 2023 all over again. It's the same thing.
For sure.
And I was
sure.
definitely the person who was like, they didn't say it was all coming, and they did not say 12 months. They said by the end of the following year. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because a lot of the stuff still isn't here 2 years later. So like, cool. Yeah. Social tools. That sounds great. Player trading is amazing. And inventory, that's the one I believe they've been doing work on that, but that shows up in the monthly report. You know, they showed us a
Yeah,
glimpse
yeah,
of that even at the Inside Star Citizen Direct. Like
yeah, yeah.
that's I have confidence in that. Just like I have confidence in crafting because they were able to show us that stuff. But like social tools, that was concept art last year. I need to see a little more than just
For
hearing
sure.
like a vague statement from Chris. I do think that's a good find though. I think that could be very telling. I just like you said, what do
Yeah.
we do with this?
Well, I'll give you my prediction because what again? This will I think like getting one prediction right about Knicks has literally thrown me completely off. I'm normally so
He's shook.
pessimistic. I'm normally
10
like
pound is
nothing's
shook.
coming. I'm all over the place. I think here's my theory of what could happen here. If everybody's feeling excited, this is the time. Lean in. Because they seem to be heavily, suddenly, out of nowhere, they've remembered that they've got a tech preview channel or EPTU, and they said that crafting's going to be there, Vulcan has still been there, engineering by the end of the year. They said that crafting will be in there by the end of the year. I wonder if they're suddenly going to actually start really using the tech preview channel to test out really early versions that won't come into the game anytime soon. So I don't think that crafting thing will be in game for quite a while, but they might run a tech preview test on it to get some data and then shut up about it for 6 months and it might come back.
Yeah.
I just wonder if they're suddenly going to start testing features in the tech preview like they said they always were going to. I just wonder if when Rich Tyra, who's quite measured normally, says very, very soon, the only way that's not coming into the game very, very soon, but it could be in players' hands in a tech preview very, very soon.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can make sense of what he's saying because it's madness to say that if they're not coming for another year. Like,
Yeah.
I can only think that he
They've
actually has some belief.
they they need to get to features eventually. And I think something that was always an interesting say that people had was if if the state of Star Citizen is terrible, then Squadron 42 is probably a ways off because whatever they've gotten in
Yeah,
Squadron, Star Citizen's probably like 1 to 2 years behind it. So we would expect to see Star Citizen becoming better in anticipation of Squadron 42 launching. That's what we're seeing right now. So that kind of tracks. In the same vein, if we're going to start seeing features actually launch into this game without destabilizing them and all that kind of stuff, we're definitely going to see them in the tech preview before, like well beforehand, right? That's going to be the canary in
yeah,
the coal mine. So like if we
yeah,
want to have good features this time next year, they got to be hitting the tech preview sometime in the next several months. And that's why I think this year was so frustrating, was because
yeah.
we still haven't seen anything hit the tech preview, which means any possible
No,
feature that would require it is more than say 3 to 6 months away.
yeah, yeah. I guess they're arguing, and what they've said that it's all behind the Vulcan stuff. They want to branch off. They want to sort their dev branch out with all the Vulcan changes in,
Right.
and then build on engine. I think that's their blocker in some ways. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because that's they've said I don't know how many times they've talked about the idea of tech preview or EPTU. Obviously, they had that bit where Jared many years ago, I don't know what year it was, where he said, "Oh, this year we're going to test this in here, we're going to test hacking in here, we're going to test this sort of stuff." They did none of it. And then they had the letter last year from the chairman that said, "Oh, here's our big plan for using the EPTU. It'll be running it parallel alongside the live patches." But maybe they're actually going to do it now. Maybe it's just been delayed. Like maybe it's like
Maybe.
Pyro. Maybe it just
Maybe.
had to take a while.
I I do hope that the reason they didn't show us a lot of these features and the development of them here was because they didn't want to put the time towards it, and they've got things that they want that they do
Yeah,
need to show us. But until like it's just there's no video content, and that's rough. It's rough
yeah,
to know what's going on. I think I got more confidence from just that like 5 to 7 second segment showing us the inventory actually working than the last 2 months of monthly reports telling me that they were working on it. I was like, wait a second, that's functional. It might be interior, it
yes,
might be just held together with bits and scraps, but it's functional. It was concept art like 2 months ago.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was a long way to go still, but you're right. The power of video versus like text is crazy, and I think they've forgotten that. They again, Jared said, "Oh, it's been the best year ever for the game." I would caveat that and say it's been the best year ever if you like playing the game. It's been the worst year ever if you like following the game's development.
Yeah.
And I think they think, or it seems as though they think that all it matters is that the game itself is playable. But they forget that a huge amount of people here are following the game for what it will become when it gets to 1.0, and they haven't got much interest in playing now when things get randomly wiped because there's persistence errors, or they're just not interested in the current gameplay coming in. So it's almost like they've just gone, stuff you guys who care about the long term of the game and where it's heading and the feature stuff.
We lost the war, buddy. They for
Maybe.
years they were getting told, stop adding features, just make the things you have there work. And like I agree that that's going to make it more popular. But it does mean that everything else slows down.
Yep.
Clearly, guys, we're not happy about features not being focused on. but there was one feature that was focused on. It's a pretty big one. Big mechanic. Crafting is, like you said, supposed to be coming into the tech preview by the end of the year. They're hoping they can do that. That is a whole other conversation, to be honest. The tech preview, I guess we just kind of had. But crafting is important, not just because you can make things. That's just one part of it. Crafting is kind of a big part of economy because it calls for people to look for resources and stuff. Do you feel like from what they showed us and the way that they talked about this first version of crafting that they're putting into the game, do you think it's going to have any sort of impact on player activities surrounding crafting? So that is like the mining to get materials, the player trading because somebody can craft something specific, the tag-ons, as opposed to just the equation that is crafting.
Yeah, I think it's hard to understand how it will affect the economy unless some of the trading stuff is in, because I mean, how would it even make any difference in the game as it is right now? You wouldn't. You'd sell it to maybe a shop. You'd set, as in, until in-game trade tools and player shops, that sort of stuff comes in, it kind of is a bit pointless in some ways. I don't know. I mean, again, let's just clarify this. What they're talking about is it coming to the tech preview, EP2, whatever they want to call it, by the end of the year. That doesn't mean it's anywhere near coming into the actual live version of the game. And so I would hope that, like Chris said, what did he say? Trade tools are very much a priority. I would hope that that's true, and I would hope that I guess maybe they'll do a basic version of crafting, like they said, focusing on FPS armor and weapons that will come in. But you'd really have to hope that some sort of trading ability for players would come pretty close after that, because otherwise, why would anybody care? It's a bit like just the general gist in the game now. It's like, well, there's all this money floating around. What can I do with it? I've just got a load of money. I've got some ships. Like, why do I care? Like, there's so many, the sinks, the kind of money sinks for the game are so kind of lacking, and just the economy itself is a big old topic that they didn't address at all this time, and they could go in a few different directions, but it remains to be seen whether they can actually sort out their plans for the economy and for how players interact with that versus NPCs. There's all sorts of stuff there.
Yeah, no economy talk, no Star Sim. I actually, one thing that really jumped out to me was when they were talking about hauling missions and interstellar hauling missions they want to include, which I think is a great touch. I mean, we definitely need to see that. There was absolutely no talk about how that would fit into the simulation, how
No.
the boxes and the commodities being moved between the systems, how those fit into any sort of economic simulation. And then they talked about how there might be combat situations that make it more dangerous. A great opportunity for them to loop back around to probability volumes, which is something that they at least said was in testing and would spawn in pirates when you were within certain ranges of certain things and would dynamically change based on the danger. This was all magical, great stuff that would make this, going back to the sandbox, make the game feel emergent. Like it was unpredictable, and therefore you were encouraged to go and take maybe a mundane job because the variables that made it mundane were different every day. Fantastic opportunity to talk about that, and they didn't touch on it at all.
No, no, and of all the things that have been talked about in the past, you're not going to like this because I know you're a big fan of this.
Oh,
I
boy.
do think
Don't do
Tony
it.
Z's vision is
Oh,
massively at risk of being
yeah, dude,
completely
I've accepted that.
chucked in the bin. Yeah.
I'm gonna have a long-term grieving period over quantum and ever trusting in Tony Z's system.
Yeah,
That's a painful one.
I think yeah, a lot of people were really drawn in by that whole thing, and obviously it was quite a long time ago, the first big presentation about it. But the current economy team don't really reference any of that stuff. That I know they've talked about the fact that the whole system is kind of in, almost they described it as being like in storage or something, like offline, not connected to the game servers, but it is still there. I just I don't think we should hold our breath that is going to come in any resembling what they talked about. I don't think it will. I think
Yeah.
unfortunately that's gone.
I don't know what they're going to do with that. I've talked to one of the economy dudes, and he really sounded like he was on the same page. The way he talked about locations all being like nodes in the economy that were sinks and producers and all this stuff. And they've talked about that as well in their monthly reports and things.
Yeah.
But it's more kind of, I guess, the simulated portion of it in that can create different scenarios for you that you don't really notice.
Yeah.
I'm not saying just because they don't talk about it doesn't mean it's not happening. But
Yeah.
it's been 5 years now, I think, since they've talked about this simulation at all. And they've mentioned the name. They said Star Sim at least 18, 20 freaking times last year.
Yeah.
But it's not something that they go into depth on.
No. And yeah, yeah. One of my theories with it is that you might have to tune it so aggressively for your average player to even notice it that it would just give it silly. Does that make sense? Like the kind of fluctuations in prices and all that sort of stuff that we're kind of looking for. I don't know whether your average player would even notice that was even going on, even if it was like fully in the game. And so they might have to do some pretty wild things to the numbers so that people are like, oh, wow, gold is really, really
Yeah.
cheap. I should go. As in, they'd have to really push it, I think, for people, your average player, to even
I hope
care.
they do.
But
Exaggerated a bit.
yeah,
I
hopefully.
hope when Nyx comes in, the numbers are crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Because they're going to wipe it all at some point anyway. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Let us
Yeah,
have fun.
they should take some wild swings with the economy to try and go too far one way and then go too far the other way, and gradually bring it to a balanced place. But some people would argue that the way they're doing it, they could never balance. It's going to be so complicated, and a lot of people would just argue that they should really just push it all towards player economy rather than this kind of fake economy that is set up. It's complicated. It's a hard one.
Yeah. That it is. So when it comes to crafting and its addition to the game, and the way that they're rolling it out, how do you feel like they're doing it? Like, do you feel it's significant, or is it a little bit lackluster?
Yeah, so they talked in a monthly report not that long ago about the idea that they're reevaluating the scope. Is that what
Yep.
they said?
Yeah.
And I think
Basically.
effectively effectively what that's meant is that they have reduced it down in its first form. It's tier 0, back to tier 0. Its tier 0 form, it will be just FPS weapons and armor is what they said. Whether that's just so that they can test it under those kind of conditions and then they'll expand it out to bigger items and all sorts of things, I don't know. But I struggle to get particularly excited about a gun in the game, if I'm honest. Some people I know will, but I don't think it's that exciting in the form that it's going to come. But if it is a stepping stone towards the bigger vision for crafting, then I'm totally fine with that. in some ways, to try and do everything all at once at the start would be a bit mad. So to just have this little version that they build on top of makes sense, but it's not exciting from a gameplay point of view, for me at least.
All right. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting when it comes to being an org. Not out of necessity, but I think, for instance, we have an org that like we know we have a uniform armor set.
Yeah.
I think it would be cool to, instead of requiring people to start at a place, or not requiring, but like suggesting people start at a place where that armor is easy to get, we have a part of our org that focuses on getting the materials and then crafting that armor and then keeping it in storage for the people. It allows for those sorts of things, but then that also requires more work on CIG's part to support that. Because if you don't have base building where you can store all that stuff, then okay, we need to be able to store it in hangars. Well, make the functionality of spawning hangars and getting ships and vehicles in hangars easier so that people actually want to do that. It's like every time it feels like something is moving forward, there's the prerequisites that also feels like it kind of might hold it back. So I would say I'm excited for crafting, but I'm hesitant to say its addition next year is going to be like the big benefit of crafting that people think of when they think of it.
Yeah. I think when they originally talked about it last year, the feelings I had about it then and the excitement I had for it then, well, this version of that won't get me feeling that way. So that's okay. I mean, it is okay as long as it isn't something they chuck in the game and then forget about. If they keep pushing it forward, then it makes some sense. But that obviously remains to be seen.
All right, let's talk about planets.
Oh yeah.
Planet tech is f***ing crazy. It looks so good. So I was wrong about my theory that Microtech was going to get Terraform to show it off. Clearly, Nyx 1 is their first planet for Planet Tech V5. I do wonder though what that blurb is about. But what was your takeaway from that whole segment?
Yeah. Well, yes. Obviously, the takeaway from a visual point of view is, again, for any of those people on the internet who are like, well, Star Citizen has been developed for so long. How can it carry on looking good? It's going to get outdated all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single year, somebody's saying that.
Yeah. That is not. There's so many things to worry about with this game and this project. That's the last thing you need to worry about. They can do graphics. That's not in question. And I was sitting there thinking, this is great. This looks insane. Like, is it an exaggeration to say they're like some of the best environments I've seen in a game?
The thing that blew me away the most about it was that it looked like the AAA games that have a really good looking play worlds, but those are
levels. Yeah,
those are handmade levels. They're not like I can't even imagine what we saw in Nyx 1 being applied to like 4 or 5 different planets and being able to fly between them and see the differences in the biomes and stuff. No, it's crazy. That's incredibly high fidelity.
Yeah, for sure. And so you have to say hats off to those guys, the guys behind all that. I mean, if the game was only reliant on the graphics and the planet tech, well, you've got to say it's up there with the best games in the whole of the world. But obviously, they're not the only things that are important. But no, I mean, for me, the kind of more, I've been dying for more alien-looking kind of planets. And I know we've had a bit of that in Pyro, but those little blobby plant things in the wetlands. Oh, that got me.
I think that was the first time I've seen flora in this game that looked properly otherworldly, which I've seen people say also. They're like, the alien planets in this game don't really feel that alien. I think that kind of got it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and in some ways you could argue that the other biomes didn't quite hit that mark, and it's still. I'm still not quite sure in terms of the art direction for the Planet Tech. It's like, why are they so hesitant to make really like full-on alien planets? Why is it all quite earthy? But I guess you got to think about the planets they're trying to make. They're probably trying to push towards Terra Prime. Is it Terra Prime, the main one? And that will be more earthy in some way. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it looked incredible. Some of the lighting, some of the the trick, you like this is like you say, if a game that had been literally hand designed uh, could put out some of this stuff like this, you'd be very impressed. But the fact that it's pretty procedural, the fact that it's yeah, they can click buttons and things happen, makes it all
Yeah,
more
man.
kind of mind blowing.
The process that we've seen their Planet Tech tool develop is I would say that's up there with as one of the top three most interesting things about Star Citizen. Going from
Yeah,
watching them put down little tiles on, you remember it's like tiles on a minesweeper board, and they would click in
yeah,
the
yeah,
little
yeah,
squares and that would create blocks of city. And like
yeah,
from that to getting Delamar to work, and then jumping forward to Water Dude, Moist Master, getting his like
yeah,
river system to work, and then eventually you
yeah,
could press a button and it would make rivers across the planet. And like I think about this as potentially being like what we see from No Man's Sky, where every 2 to 3 years we just see a new update to Planet Tech that brings in some kind of
yeah,
different thing. Like maybe right now they're focusing more on the terrestrial looking planets, and then at some point we get Planet Tech V6, and it's just like balls to the wall, very extraterrestrial, alien environments and
yeah,
that kind of stuff to flesh it out. But I love watching what they do with the planets. It's incredible. It's crazy. I
for
never
sure.
thought I would care that much about trees and grass in a space game.
No, the grass was the meadows. I, I mean, again, I was just looking at it thinking, this is insane, and it's
It's so
just grass.
satisfying. The most
It's
satisfying
insane. I
part
mean,
of the whole video was the I think it was a Ursa Lynx or an RSI Lynx. It like drove through a grassy meadow, up a hill, drove across a hill, down the other side, and kept going. And I was like, that's butter. Can we please have that in the game?
yeah, 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 and I mean, the interesting thing, obviously, is that with their Planet Tech, they're still, I suppose, if you to visualize it, they're still going kind of up in terms of quality rather than wide in terms of delivery, if that
Yeah,
makes any sense. So they're not. I think people maybe had in their head that with the Planet Tech, they'd get to the point where they suddenly could just like click buttons and planets and moons would just be like bang, they're here. Whereas they're still really focused on the fidelity and the immersion. And I guess I wonder if this, again, they talk about the Genesis suite of tools or whatever. I wonder if this will be the point where they suddenly then click onto the other planets. So I think they mentioned in the presentation that once they'd got Genesis in with Nix One, they then would continue out to the rest of the planets in the game. I think they said something like that, and they talked about it being some point next year. So again, this isn't coming soon, but there's hope maybe that they will actually get to the point where they're like, well, our Planet Tech is mostly complete, and we're happy to apply it to all of our planets, and then that means that they can move on more quickly to things like Castra and Terra. But I think there is a chance that they could just get too bogged down in constantly improving and improving and improving, and then
yeah.
never get to the point where they just can get things out quickly. Like they look good enough now. I'd say they look good enough.
I would like to see them hit 1.0 with like a V6. I think
Okay. Yeah.
something that shows. I think it seems like biomes and fidelity were a big focus here, like making biomes blend well, grass and tree scattering on the GPU, lighting environments and stuff like that. I want to see an update that focuses on large scale objects, like scale, like what they did on Pyro 1, um
Okay.
Pyro 3, Monox, Pyro 2, I don't know, whatever the pyro is with the giant arches,
Yeah. Yeah.
more
Okay. Yeah. Which
more
one is that?
ability to do
Yeah. Go.
that, and then also more ability to integrate the locations. I guess this is part of Genesis. I'm thinking more ability to integrate the locations with the planet and have them meld more
Yeah.
seamlessly, which is kind of Starkitect. So maybe
Yeah.
it is part of V5 is what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. And they obviously only really talked about the planet creation stuff and the ability to kind of base everything on the data They didn't talk about the other aspects of Genesis that they did last year. That was another thing that
Yeah.
was missing almost. No
Yeah.
Starchitect talk, nothing on what was it? The global illumination stuff. I was hoping to see something about that. Nothing on sound at all. This whole thing, but sound can come when it comes. But yeah, the Starchitect thing, I would have. You can still see why this isn't coming like with this first drop of Nyx, because clearly their tools for Genesis aren't ready to literally hit a button and a whole planet is created. They're
Yeah.
clearly not at that point. We didn't see any locations on Nyx 1 at all. It was all the biome stuff. And so, yeah, there's still a way to go, I think.
There definitely is. And these are the kinds of things that I'm like, okay, maybe 2027, 2028 really sounds like the kind of target you would set if you weren't trying to iterate on this anymore. Like I don't look at what they're doing with Genesis and think that they can rework RCorp easily. It seems like that would take something more specific that they would work
Yeah.
on to get that planet to work right. And I don't really see that happening in 2 years.
No, there is a decent chance that the game has all these incredible looking planets and then ArcCorp. And it's like, and you're like, you just say to people who are new, just like, don't go to that one. It looks like it's from like 2018. Ignore that planet. It doesn't look great, but everything else looks incredible.
And then RCorp has the
There's a
best missions and stuff.
well, not anymore. When now it's lost the municipal works, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
I they've talked about ArcCorp being a whole different use, a different case, and so yeah, could they take it out?
Oh God.
If it's that
Could
poor,
they
if it's
take
that
it
far
out?
behind, if it's that far behind the visual quality of the rest of the game, because it's funny, you sometimes now look at you look at footage from the game, and depending on where you are, the quality bar it does
changes.
vary, and so
Yeah.
Chris and his visuals, I wouldn't be shocked if it does a Delamar. Maybe it just, I mean, that's a crazy prediction.
I think
Yeah, I
I
don't know
think
about
that they'll keep it looking good. I think what's more important or like the more difficult thing they have to figure out is how to make it be an ecumenopolis, but that still has wilderness because it's supposed to have some
yeah,
areas that you can move around on the ground. It's supposed to have bodies of water, and I think that the stretch of city that they need to figure out some way to have that replicate going around a planet like Hurston and going to bunkers and distribution centers and labs and aid
yeah,
shelters. Maybe
yeah,
not as
yeah.
much, not a 1-to-1, but there should be reason for you to go to other parts of RCorp than just Area 18. It's a whole freaking planet for like
Yes.
for literally like 2 square kilometers of walking space.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to get too bogged down with Area 18 and Arcor, but if they're not going to pull off building interiors anytime soon, then you could make the argument to say that a Coruscant type planet isn't actually that interesting in a game like this,
Mm-hmm.
where you want to go down to, like, if it was like you described, much more varied in terms of some of the planet has got land and things that you can do on that, in some ways makes for a much better gameplay experience than what we've got now, which is pretty it,
Pretty basic.
it's bad. I'd go as far as saying it's a bad gameplay experience at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Would you suggest this is so completely off topic, but would you suggest people start at RCorp at all? We were just doing a tour of like the best home
Oh yeah,
locations, and I was asking people of like
well
what are the best, and RCorp actually came in ranked fairly high.
yeah, it's quite quick to get out of. Is that the main thing? You can get out of it
Yeah, it's
fast.
pretty
Um,
quick. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, from my side of things with the performance stuff, how quickly you can get off the planets in some ways is out of the cities is quite important. But I mean, I'm a Hurston person forever, so I would choose Hurston if I could. But what did you find having toured them all? What did you think? Horizon's pretty good.
I actually found that I enjoy Lorville more than I realized. I've
Yeah,
I think I love to be, I love to give Lorville crap because the Hurstons are terrible, but as far as the lore of the city, no pun intended, the world building, the actual design, and how much it just feels like the game kind of seeps into your experience being in Loreville, it's enjoyable. It's also pretty quick to get out. Um, you got a ton of ground locations that you can go to there. You got tons of moons, 4 moons, I think most moons in the system. And the moons are nice. Magda is amazing. Ariel is pretty cool. Aberdeen is one of a kind and has a prison. It's just Hurston it's in the center of the system, so location's good too.
Yeah.
So I would
Yeah.
say that from that criteria, Hurston does seem like the best choice. But I'm Arcourt boy through and through. See me. At me about it.
No, until they take it out of the game.
Yeah, until they remove it because it's too ugly. I think that they just need to figure out building interiors. But the interesting bit about that is, like you mentioned, the one aspect of building interiors that they're carrying forward with, which is the municipal
Yeah.
works, have been moved from Arcorp to Levski. That doesn't mean that Arcorp's not going to get content, but it clearly shows they feel like there are other places that may be more good for it, whether that's because they want to take people to Nyx or because Arcorp is not
Yeah.
updated enough. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably questionable whether it can be classed as a building interior or more of a custom built level. I think yeah, the idea behind building interiors was, from what I can remember, is that anything in some ways on somewhere like area on ArtCorp, they could just have a building and then populate it. Whereas I imagine this is custom built stuff inside the asteroid. So I mean, the main thing is it's mission content at a landing location, and that's the problem with the cities on in Stanton. Is just like,
Yeah,
well, there's nothing to do there, like
yeah,
literally nothing to do. So it's a good thing, I think, in the same ways that if you go to any of the stations in Pyro, and you want to contest these zones, are literally right there. You can be doing something instantly, and so that's good. Uh, yeah, I mean, all the Nyx content that they showed. So they showed that as an option. So that's the municipal work stuff. They talked about um, the the cracker, the
the
stone. What was
rock
it called?
cracker.
Rock breaker. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's another thing to do there. Then they talked about the welcome to Pyro thing where you fight Vanduul ships, and then they talked about the big thing at the end, which I didn't think was that big a deal, but maybe I misunderstood it. But the whole idea of doing the Death Star run and everything, they've got good plans for content in Nyx. Um, but yeah, that you could really argue that maybe ArtCorp could have done with some reason to visit, and maybe the municipal works in ArtCorp would have potentially been better for ArtCorp, but I guess
do you
they
think
don't think that.
you said that you feel it's probably like custom made bespoke stuff? You don't think that they might be able to repurpose it and use this as another underground location, just like mix up the corridors and stuff in other cities?
It's a good question. I mean, I can't remember what they showed. It was quite concept arty, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I imagine it will be quite like built into the asteroid that it's in, and so I wonder from an art point of view how transferable it will be.
Hmm.
But we won't know until it arrives. Yeah, it's hard to know. It's hard to know. They honestly, with the ASD locations, they've dropped loads of them um, into Stanton,
Yeah.
and they're basically they're copies of each other, and so maybe they would do that. But it, I don't know why they called it exactly the same thing. It seemed to me as though it was one of those classic starters and things where one year they say, we've got this great idea, we're going to do the area, Art Corp, Area 18 municipal works, you're going to go down in the sewers and blah, blah, blah. And then they follow it up by saying, oh, we've slightly tweaked that and we're going to do it slightly differently. I would expect that it might be a kind of Levski only thing, but we'll see. We'll see.
I think you're not wrong about that in the time being. But that does give them, it gives Pyro something to do from the landing zone. The representative landing zone. It gives Nyx something to do in the landing zone, but Stanton still has nothing. And I think, like you said, that's really it's important to give people not just the ability to do stuff quickly, but to do stuff without flying a spaceship. There's a lot of people who don't want to fly, and sometimes you just want to hop in the game and like run a quick maintenance repair mission down in the depths of the city.
Yeah.
Do you think
Yeah.
do you think that every city is going to have this stuff eventually?
Yeah, I would think eventually. Whether that's post 1.0 or not, I don't know. It's really hard to know how. But I've been shocked in some ways by how much content they pumped out this year. And I started to speculate the other day. I don't know where I was talking about it, but I started to speculate that maybe the squadron teams who are working on locations have actually mostly finished that work, and they've been freed up to do all this stuff for the PU, and that's why all this stuff is happening. That could be true, and that if that is the case, if they've got loads more teams or more teams able to pump out mission content and locations, maybe over the next few years before 1.0 comes, maybe all the landing locations get custom kind of content that you can do there. That is by far the best case scenario. Like you say, you do have to go quite a long way to get into a mission currently. If you open up at Area 18 or at Lawville or anywhere like that. So yeah, the experience on bizarrely the Pyro experience where you can just straight off get into something is probably what they need to do for everywhere, but it's going to depend on how much can they pump out over this year and then going forward over the next few years. I mean, we're saying it's interesting talking about the pumping out loads of content. The next year is going to be pumping out more and more content to fill out Nix. What does that mean for Castra? Does that mean they'll at the end of the year be ready to do something similar like we talked about at the start, where they'll just drop in a pretty empty Castra and then they'll start pumping out all the stuff for Castra the next year? How will they fit in sprucing up Stanton, especially?
I think
We can only speculate.
if they were gonna use that model, I'd like to see that first drop always have the landing zone. Like if they're gonna drop Castra next at the end of next year, whether it's in the tech preview or PT or whatever, I would want to see it come with Cascom. And then the stuff that they're adding after that is like the other planets or the asteroid belt or something like that.
That would make sense. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. There is. It's funny we're talking about Sandbox versus theme park stuff. There is a long way still to go on both, and there is still a long way to go on content and mission content, like curated mission content that CIG create for us. And you have to say that when you look at the kind of spiral of things that 1.0 kind of talked about, the vision for it, there's still a lot of stuff they've got to pump out. So will they divert slightly to sort out the landing locations at Area 18? We will have to see.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the other content coming to Nix. You mentioned Rock Cracker.
Yeah.
This is like a dynamic event. This is a dynamic event, basically. It's
Hathor in a asteroid, basically, in some ways.
Yeah. So what I'm wondering about this is they say it's a new mission type. Do you think this is the kind of thing where you can just like appear at the location and start running it kind of like you do with Hathor, or do you think you have to take a mission and then go in and get objectives that tell you what to do?
Great question. I can't remember if they mentioned anything to do with that. I would expect it to be a bit like Hathor, where it's just an open location that you can rock up to and just do the stuff there. They didn't, from what I can remember, correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't link this heavily to the instancing, did they, that one?
No.
I think that one...
No.
Yeah, so I would think it would be a bit like Stormbreaker, the worm stuff that we've got now, and Hathor, where they're just locations that you can just go and do this stuff and at any point. I think that's how that one came across of the ones that they've talked about. That was just an open location, as well as the first one. Hard to know with the first one, the Welcome to Stanton one, whether that would be
what that was about.
Well, that's the one that's kind of been linked with being this dynamic event where you're introduced to this gang, but they didn't. But they did. I think they did talk about the fact that it would continue being there, and you could keep running it or something. So They seem to have moved away from the idea of putting in content that they then remove from the game. They want it to be there that people can play, which makes
It's
sense.
what we've been yelling all year, right? I swear to God, people have been telling me that an event in Star Citizen is basically any update. And I'm like, you guys, we can't use that terminology going forward. It's not like Nick's getting added to the game as an event. It's an event in the sense that it happens, but it's not like
Yeah,
it's not an event in the same way that Siege of Orison used to be, or that the Supply or
yeah,
Die was an event. And I think it's important to just or to specify what
yeah.
things people can just expect to always be around to do versus things they have to jump into the game to do. And this addition for us getting into Nyx sounds kind of like a little like the fight for Pyro. I think that was an event where it was a timed event, but the missions that we got from it continued on in the game in different ways, right?
Yeah, they've started to reuse some of the stuff that they've put in. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I can't remember exactly how they talked about this. It seemed to me as though you could they were talking about repurposing it, but then they talked about the fact that they'd want to change the story. So it maybe is a sort of an event, sort of not event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it seems like what they're doing with ASD, where we're running a story based on time in the ASD facilities in Lazarus and
Yeah.
everything, but they'll probably just find a way for that to still exist in the game long term afterwards. But it did
Yeah.
sound like in that one, did they mention that we were supposed to like get refugees out of a place they were supposed to get on our ship and go with us? Were they?
That was the last thing. That was the what was it called? Tactical.
Oh, that was the tactical thing.
That was the Death
Tactical
Star one. I
strike
think there was a
groups.
segment. That's the one. There was a segment of that where you pull out, I guess, AI, which in some ways is a bit like passenger transport.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So, huh?
maybe well, yeah, that was a
Like if
random
passengers,
reference.
if hostages can be referenced or rescued, um, just like we're talking about, that is definitely the kind of thing they can use for other missions in the future. Not even
Yeah,
passenger transport, literally just like search and recover, search and rescue kinds of
yeah,
missions.
yeah, yeah,
If you could just get an NPC to get on your ship and then get off when you get to a space station, that makes a big difference.
for sure. Yeah, I think it was a bit unclear whether an AI ship would be the one removing them or not. So
Mhm.
it's possible that they just have a load of NPCs run onto an AI ship and then they despawn and you don't have to worry about it. But yeah, yeah, that event. So that one, the Death Star one, is effectively it's a bigger scale space battle outside of a station where you're actually attacking the space station, which isn't actually something we've really done before. Um, I was a bit in my video. I was a bit like, "Oh, is this? Do we not have spaceship content?" I feel like we've got lots of spaceship content, but it is a bit different, I suppose. And the fact that you've got multiple stages, again, they seem to be obsessed with every single thing they do. There's always going to be some sort of FPS on station combat. Like,
Yeah. But
I think people
that's a
go
dream.
on.
I mean, that's what people have always wanted from spaceship games is like, yeah, I love this, but can I
Yeah.
please get onto that station and see what's going on?
Yes. I suppose that is Star Citizen's unique selling point is that you can do that, get off the spaceship and run around. I think maybe the Rockbreaker one, where the fact that that features FPS combat, again, it's like I think if you're a miner, you might be like, oh, come on, can I just have
Yeah.
something I can do where I don't have to shoot somebody?
I was going to
But
ask you about
yeah,
that. It's kind of it's Nyx is an industrial system, and I realize that they need to continue to build risk into these into the things that we're doing, but it feels like the risk that they keep bringing in is very conventional combat as opposed to the risks that you
yeah,
would think of when it comes to mining, or like the dangerous materials, the hazardous locations, and occasionally the potential of combat. I think that should be important too, but I can imagine it's harder for somebody who takes on mining to look at these additions and feel like they can still be just a pure miner. Yeah, get an escort, sure,
yeah.
or whatever, but like,
Nobody's going to do that. Well,
yeah,
not
and I
that's not
know
true. Not no, not
Nyx is a
nobody.
late game location too, so it's, I don't want to say it should be easy, but there should still be things that are challenging for miners salvagers, industrial players that doesn't necessarily push you towards combat, right?
Yeah, I just wonder if they, as a company, haven't. They can easily, it seems, put in FPS enemies and therefore build a mission around that.
Yeah.
They probably, because of lack of features, like we talk about all this stuff, sort of stuff, it probably is a lot more challenging for them to come up with a full mining mission flow through a location where you have to bring a laser back online and then do some mining. It's probably harder for them to work out a good way to do that. And it's a lot easier to, and again, because they're working at a speed and they've been pushing out a patch each month, and next year they're going to sounds like they're going to still move at a fairly rapid pace. It's probably not easy for them just to sort of do a mining only mission, which I think is a shame. I think that one, I think they should work on that, and they should change that so that you don't have to shoot a gun. You shouldn't have to shoot a gun in this game in every single thing.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
yeah.
I'm not necessarily the kind of person who thinks there should be just like closed off PvE environments for every type of gameplay and you should always be safe, whatever you want to do. But
Yeah.
I do think that there is a point at which they need to start to get more into the dangers of industrial gameplay without necessarily melding in combat all the time.
Yeah, for sure. There are things they could do with instability, or like there's challenge they can add to mining. And I mean, if you lived in a universe where the pyro solar flare was still there, there's challenge around things that they can. There are environmental things they can do, radiation, obviously, things like that. There are options, but that's not what they're going for at the moment, by the looks of things.
Yeah. What do you think of the mission overall, Rockcracker? I mean, I think it looks, not only does the actual sequence of doing the gameplay looks like it's a pretty fun time, but the environments and the instruments that they're using, like these mining lasers and asteroids and stuff, it all feels like the really crunchy sci-fi stuff that I always wanted to see in video games as I grew up, or maybe that was barely touched on in video games as I grew up. It's really cool to see them be centerpieces of the main part of a game.
Yeah. No, I think it is. I think it appeals to a lot of people, which in some ways is a shame why it can't just be a more purely mining based activity. But yeah, no, I think what they showed off for all of the different missions they showed off. There's real promise in all of them. But yeah, that one in particular, I think because they talked at the start about, oh, next is going to be more kind of there's going to be a lot of mining content. I think I personally was hoping that there would be, yeah, just pure mining content. And I'm just saying the same thing over and over again, but take out the guns. Take out the guns. Yeah. I love guns. I personally, of the thing that I love in this game the most, it probably is FPS combat. But I can see that a lot of people just don't want to go. They don't want to have to do it everywhere they go.
Yeah, and you shouldn't have to. That's not the kind of game this is. A lot of people think it's becoming that, but it's not. It is still still based on a lot of different stuff. Speaking of which, or rather, despite that fact, we're gonna dip back into combat. Siege of Orison is a pretty exciting comeback, and it's coming back as an instanced event. So this is kind of an opportunity for us to talk about how instancing is going to change Star Citizen in combination with like Siege of Orison being a clear focus for them in terms of events. What do you think of this new version of Siege of Orison, first of all?
Yeah, well, if anybody has played the old version of Siege of Orison, or it's had a few variations over the years, they added a timer on it for the start at one point where you had to kind of wait for it to start and you all went in together, which was supposedly to help the flow of the mission so that you didn't end up miles behind people who were just completing everything. You were just running around a wasteland with nothing to do.
Right.
Ultimately, it's never worked really from a performance point of view, but also from a mission flow point of view. There's always been issues with it, and so it is the prime example of something that instancing, in theory, makes a really good event. You go in with your group, however big, they can scale it up for you in the instance up or down in terms of difficulty, number of enemies, that sort of stuff. And you can run through a mission that takes, I don't even know how long. I don't think I've ever actually got to the end. There's always been something that's bugged out, or I didn't make it all the way through. But yeah, it's a classic. It's the thing that makes the most sense. It's almost like a clear example of what instancing can be used for in this game that makes sense. A PvE experience where you and your friends can run through something and not have to worry that some other player is either trying to kill you or has just finished the mission before you've even got started, which is often what happens. So I'm big thumbs up for me. It does raise the instancing stuff, as we talked about earlier, obviously raises a load of questions for people, and it raises questions that CIG wanted to kind of get ahead of. Again, they said, this isn't everything. We're not going to instant everything. But the problem with this game is, and I think Jared said this game is everything, or he said the game is everything, or is a game for everyone, or something like that.
Right.
So many people have different ideas about what they want to do in this game. And a big chunk of those people don't want to do anything to do with PvP. And so the game in its current state is a bit brutal for those guys in certain areas. And so if you want to try a mostly PvE experience, sometimes that's not very possible or very fun.
Yeah.
And so instancing allows those guys to engage in this game. The PvP people will say, well, you've just killed my experience because I can't now fight people. But that's a bit simplistic, I think. And I think both teams, both sides of that can have a good experience still. Yeah, what do you think?
I think it's good as an instanced event. I actually think this is a really interesting topic for Star Citizen because of the way the game has changed throughout the years. Originally, it was supposed to be just a bunch of instances. Even the star systems were just instances that you would load into from the planet. It was much more basic than what we have now. And so then we got all the way to this other side of the fence with people where they thought every single thing should be real time, 100% connected. I was in this camp for a long time. I was just like, dude, let's full fidelity, all realism. Yeah. We're in it. We got this. And then you get to the point where you're just you start to realize, like, there were little edge cases that would be brought up and you'd be like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. They'd be like, okay, what happens when Miles Eckhart has to meet with 50 people at one time? You're going to line up and wait for him to talk to you? And people are like, yeah, realism. I'm going to wait in line. And eventually you're just kind of like, no, let's not do that. So it's interesting to see them talk about fleet battles in space being instanced and these missions on the ground being instanced. And I'm guessing underground facilities and distribution centers will allow for instances, and all these things being seamless means you don't notice it. You get to have your own packaged gameplay that's prepared for you without feeling like you're running through a loading screen or something. But it is going to affect people's view of the game, I think. A lot of people are going to think this is them getting around the difficulties that they were trying to create with the whole connected verse. And you could argue that not having people queue up for Miles Eckhart is a difficulty. The question is, are you willing to see that sort of thing disappear in the name of having better gameplay scenarios? Do you think that this is taking away from the magic that made Star Citizen so appealing to people, that connectedness?
Yeah, I mean, for some people it will. That will be, they wouldn't. I think even the more kind of anti-instancing people would see that there's some points where it makes sense. And obviously we've got instance hangers in the game right now, and that makes sense. It doesn't really affect anybody. It makes sense. Part of me, again, similar to you, the idea that this game was this crazy thing where 1,000 people, let's ignore that actual number, but a crazy amount of people might get together, fight in a big battle in space, just randomly almost, because they just found each other. That was and still is appealing to me. But I think reality has smacked CIG in the face a bit, and that they just, either from, it doesn't work for a lot of players who want to play this game, who've paid thousands and thousands of dollars, I suppose. They have to provide something for those people to do who don't want to just be in an open, big PvP environment. But the other side of it would be, and maybe this is where I might throw on my conspiracy theory hat. I wonder if CIG have just got to the point where they're like, the engine can't cope in doing some of these things. It just can't do it. And so
But
we have to instance.
isn't that why server meshing and object container streaming are trying to split these things off from each other in the servers?
Yeah, yes. And so I suppose the way to look at it might be that this instancing stuff, I think they talked about being like a bridge between static and dynamic.
Yeah.
And so it might be that as they go forward, what there might be a line that's quite blurry between what's instancing, what's dynamic server meshing.
That's fair.
That could happen. And so I just think dynamic probably is quite a way off. And the thing to point out with this, they said, I have it in my head that they said something around, this will be happening some point in 2026. They showed a load of instancing content, none of which was instanced. That's the point. A lot of all the content they were showing, they hadn't nothing. The video they showed, they hadn't instanced anything, because Benoit was in an SEL a few weeks ago saying we're still working on it, we're still getting going with it, and so none of this is ready to go. But yes, the performance side as well is, it might be client side performance as well, because on your own PC, even if you're running the highest stuff, there gets to a point where the numbers get too big and it just all grinds to a halt. And so they might just need to control numbers more with instancing and not have some of the. I think people have in their mind that they, not that they ever expected to get to like the Eve numbers of like crazy battles or anything like that, but they were maybe hoping for giant space battles. And I wonder if there's some kind of reality setting in at CIG where they're just like, well, we can't really do some of that stuff on that scale that we maybe hoped for 12 years ago.
This isn't necessarily to say that they're not going to allow fleet battles to happen in space, right?
No, but they might, in order to support fleet battles in space, as they ramp up dynamic meshing and this instancing tech in some sort of combination, there's a chance to say that they might heavily rely on spinning servers up for bigger battles, but still they'll get to a point where they'll grind to a halt. So yeah, I mean, it's all speculation at this point, and like I said, none of this is actually working tech in the game or even in prototype. They showed us some videos of some ideas that they have that would include instancing. They didn't show us any instancing, so we're guessing in some ways.
Yeah, it's still a little bit unknown what exactly their plans are, but I do definitely hope, I would expect that just because they're doing instanced content to maybe make it more curated to work on fleet battles and stuff, there should definitely be large-scale fleet battles able to be had in this game. I mean, if there were not, that would be ridiculous, at least with dynamic server meshing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The prospect of dynamic server meshing, we've seen them say that they need it for instancing. Do you think if they're planning on having instancing working in 26 with Siege of Orison, as they're talking about, with whatever's going on in Levski or Nyx, do you think that means that dynamic server meshing might be working? Or, like you said, it's just a halfway step and they're on the way?
I would assume that it means they're on the way. What was interesting is that how at the start of the whole event, Chris was talking about how they've passed their last major tech hurdle. And so I think they maybe look at dynamic meshing as more of a like nice to have thing when they get there, rather than like an essential for maybe even something like 1.0. It could be that, well, go on.
I just feel like that would be a very big pivot from what he said. As like, I don't even remember what year it was, but he made a letter where he talked about for static meshing, then dynamic server meshing, then that would allow them to make something like dynamic islands or something. You remember he was like kind of saying a capital ship could be its own server, and these would be like dynamic islands that could move around. So like, I would definitely be disappointed if he turned away from that kind of thinking.
I don't think they won't do it. I wonder how much it's essential for their current plan of pumping out all this content, I suppose, is what I mean by that. I don't think they're going to obviously increase the system number without any dynamic meshing, and we don't know what they're going to do with the mesh configuration, all that sort of stuff. That'll be interesting to see how they do it. But I just wonder if what he's saying at the start of this event, Chris, where he's like, "Oh, we're now able to really press on the pedal." I don't know how, in the way that they're planning to deliver all this stuff and they're planning to deliver Nix, I don't see that they need to do dynamic like soon. But the question will be, will it be in for 1.0 or not? And again, we're in
It
guest
better be,
territory, I
man.
suppose.
Oh, it better be. In my head, we still got at least 4 years till 1.0. And if we don't have dynamic by then, I'm going to be whelmed.
You'd hope to have it by then. You would hope to have it by then.
Dude, I'm hoping to
Yeah.
have it by the end of
But
next year. I would
really?
hope that
Oh,
they
wow.
would have some form of dynamic meshing, at least in the tech preview, by the end of next year. I think just based on what Benoit was saying, you know? And I'm obviously taking them at their word is not necessarily the key to success. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that we should I guess expected is the wrong word. I'm holding their feet to the fire on that. Dynamic meshing
Yeah.
was communicated to us as being something that would come through to take over from static, and not in a long kind of layout, not on a long period of time. The way he talked about it was like static is a lot of the work, dynamic is kind of there to help alleviate the stress and spread things out. That being said, we also know it's a very important and unique thing that they're doing. So I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
we should be hearing more about it end of next year, but I don't know.
Yeah, you'd hope so. And what I mean, the way I read what I can't remember exactly what he said about it, but the feeling I got from when I watched that SEL with Benoit was that they were almost kind of starting on some tasks that would. It didn't feel like they'd made particularly massive progress on it. Was the feeling I got coming away from that. So maybe that's kind of affecting my viewpoint. But I just don't know. I don't know how it. Maybe this is more down to my lack of imagination, but I'm not sure I can see how dynamic meshing dramatically changes the gameplay experience that we have in the game right now if it comes in the current universe as it is. And so I'm just wondering whether they want to spend a load of time getting it right rather than rushing it in. But who
For
knows?
me,
The
it's
instancing stuff basically that's what I'm saying. The blurry line between the instancing and dynamic meshing kind of means that in some ways it is coming in a way next year, and it's all
right.
yeah. Who
Yeah.
knows?
I think that what is the point that you just made? I'm sorry. I was about to respond to the point you made right before dynamic and instancing being kind of similar.
Uh, is it needed? Is it needed in the current version of the game?
Oh,
That's what I
yes,
was
yes,
asking.
yes, yes, yes. I think it's for me it's more of a money question. Like
Yeah. Okay.
as they keep adding in these star systems, I guess they don't necessarily have to boost the player count, but I'm just thinking there's more content coming in. So players want to move around and do more things. It's more possible that you have to add more servers in for each system. And at that point, you have servers that are sitting basically unutilized at times. How much money do you want to burn? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're adding Nix and then you add Castra. And if we don't have dynamic server meshing by the time you add Castra, are you willing to make every single shard be made up of 20 different servers? Or are you starting to pull back because you're spending too much money on the PU, which then affects the players? So for me, it's kind of like are you able to allocate money correctly for this to keep scaling question?
Yeah, and that is a fair question. That is one of the major reasons they might push on the pedal to get it done. I suppose maybe the fact that they've made so much money this year maybe slightly negates that fear for them. Maybe they're like, well, we can afford it
We
because we've
can
made
wait a
loads of
couple
money.
more
But
years, just 2 more years, right?
I mean, I don't think I don't think they deliberately won't put it in. I just, in terms of CIG, obviously have priorities that they focus on,
Right.
and if we're talking about the idea that they're going to want to test a lot of things potentially in the tech preview channel over the next year or so, will dynamic server meshing be one of them? Will they say, well, actually, it's more important to do this or to do that? I don't know.
All right, let's let's wrap this discussion up. We didn't touch on every single thing from CitizenCon. I think we hit most of the exciting things I really wanted to discuss. But I also think we both probably have plenty more content coming out talking about this and a lot more to digest. It's still just a day old. I need to go back and watch this again. I was like streaming it, and then also we had our watch party, so I probably missed some stuff. But to close this out, I kind of want to just ask generally from you, what stuff do you feel was actually missing from the show that you expected?
Ooh. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll touch on some of the things we've half mentioned quickly. I mean, we talked about engineering people were expecting,
Yeah.
but that again, they've argued that they've covered it already. What's the point? And maybe because it's coming in a tech preview in theory by the end of the year, again, will they suddenly start spinning up ISCs about little things again? I don't know, but maybe engineering is one thing I expected. The things that, again, Chris mentioned there, the base building, social and trade tools, the things that he said are very much a priority. I think he's saying they're in active development. We don't know what that means.
Yeah.
That could mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
That could mean literally anything. And so that when they don't show things, I get a bit concerned. And again, they're at pains to say, again, I'll quote Rich Tyler, dispelling a myth, features are still being worked on quite heavily. I don't know what you mean by quite heavily. Quite heavily doesn't sound like that
we
convincing.
check on the Jira task every day.
I would suggest that we're still at this point where Squadron, we're not talking about Squadron, and again, they didn't talk about Squadron. I would still say Squadron is sucking a significant amount of the air, of oxygen out of the air in the CIG world. And so when Chris says we're working, they're in active development, base building, social and trade tools, I don't know if I completely believe him. That's my controversial take on this. I think they've got plans for them, but the fact that they had nothing to show us, unless again they start showing, again, he's saying he's suggesting they're coming in 2026. I was shocked that we saw nothing. I wasn't shocked that we saw nothing on the social and trade tools. I was surprised we didn't see anything on the base building. I think that was the thing that people would assume. There'd be crafting, there'd be base building, but then maybe because what they showed with crafting was so kind of scoped down and so early, maybe that tells us where base building is at. I know last year we had some like visual stuff and it looked maybe a bit further ahead of crafting, but I imagine that was just visual mock-up for the event and it wasn't like.
I mean, like he said, it was working in their client during their demonstration last year.
Is that what they said last year?
Yeah. When he was outside with the cart and they were building that little outpost, he was like, "This is currently running on the client, but we're using debug stuff for the developers." So
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's weird to not see it then.
But where's that gone? Where's it gone if that's the case? So yeah, I mean that stuff obviously. Yeah. What for you? What was missing for you? What were the key things you were like? Oh, I wanted to see that and I didn't see it.
I think the biggest was base building. Star Sim was also there. I genuinely think that the best thing they could have done was done a gameplay demo in Nix, but I guess they don't have the ability to do that. I think there's a lot of the advertising they're trying to do is not towards the people who used to get who they used to do, you know? They love telling us about features and getting us excited for the nerd stuff. There's a lot of people who want a good space game to play casually, and that's who CIG is trying to market towards right now. I don't think they should be by any means. I think they're getting there, but in my mind, if that's their goal, and you know, maybe I'm completely wrong, reading it all wrong, but if that's their goal and they want to bring in more people who would be kind of interested in a playable version of Star Citizen, showing a game demo of the game actually working in something that people will be playing in 2 months' time, I think would have been a really good thing for them to drop, because people would have been reacting to that around YouTube. That's a video clip that would have gotten posted to all of those random channels that like take and repost gameplay demos in 4K and like you're like, oh, what game is this? IGN would have probably posted it up. They just it feels like there was a little bit of a ball dropped there in terms of marketing potential.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's nothing that's like immediately shareable apart from the Planet Tech stuff. And you might see the Tech stuff and say, "Oh, look at this. This isn't in game. This
Yeah,
is just this is
not even
not. There's no
gameplay.
game here. It's still
Yeah,
it's a tech demo still." And so, yes, considering that their biggest success was the Squadron demo from last year, and then the Star Engine trailer. They're the things that I think have gone the widest. There was no attempt in some ways to even recreate those things this
yeah,
year. It was quite low key. But then maybe they again, maybe because they've made so much money this year, and primarily I think they've made the money from current backers. Like, I know the number of new backers is going up compared to last year, but I wonder if most of their money has been made from current backers spending more money on new ships because they're playing the game. They'll know that information. So maybe they thought, well, we don't need to push. I mean, SE's really at the point where they want to push it too wide because it's not really ready for it.
yeah.
But
But at the
but then
same
again, they have all their
time,
trailers.
they
The trailers
like
are all pushed out. Yeah.
yeah, and like the one of the most successful things they've put out was also the Planetary Tech demo from 2016. Clearly
Yeah.
that wasn't ready to
Yeah.
be put out yet. Like why
No,
not do
that's
something like that now, but with all real assets that literally players can jump into the comments and be like, "No, you can do that in the game. You can go and repair a space station in Nyx
yeah.
that's being attacked by Vanduul raids." Like that, it was interesting that they talked about it instead of showed it. I don't think it's bad that they did that. I'm glad that it's coming. I'm looking at the potential of what it could have been, and I think a gameplay demo would have been great.
Yes, that they obviously have traditionally heavily leaned on gameplay demos, and maybe the time thing. They thought, oh, they take quite a while to go through it and narrate
Yeah.
it, and maybe it would add too much runtime to the event. But then they spent a load of time waffling on about lore, and I know some people like lore, but I think, yeah, you're right. They the environment obviously of Levski was clearly finished, but it was more what it was all. And here's a conspiracy back again. It was all ISC gameplay capture team stuff. If that makes any sense, it was
Yeah.
all the stuff that you'd expect to see in ISC. It wasn't. That team has clearly been working on this all year or whatever, and not been making IC through a spoohoo. But it wasn't gameplay, like you say, and considering the company has so often been like, look, here's real gameplay. Look, it crashes. Look, it's real. This was not that at all, which is it is a good point. It's an interesting shift for their marketing. But I just feel like they're not ready to really. To be fair though, when Nyx comes out, there'll for sure be a dramatic trailer that they want to push as wide as possible on YouTube. So
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah, interesting.
There's
What
choices
if
being made.
overall? What? Yeah, yeah. Overall, what if you to sum up your feelings about the whole event? How would you sum them up?
It felt like a bit of a recalibration, um, and an extension of the whole year. This
Yeah,
really feel like it's solidified the direction they started with last year's CitizenCon, which was for 1.0. And then the fact that they are trying to get this into the point where like we could basically be playing Star Citizen 1.0. Not to say we have all the features or the expectations or any of the things that should be there, but they want this to be a game where people can jump in and play maybe 2 weeks every month and get some fresh content and get a cool update and maybe buy something and then go play their other games and then come back to it and do more of that. So it felt very much focused on showing what capabilities there would be to do that next year. Here's the content that's coming. Here are the things that are going to support it. And we're keeping it to 12 months, which I don't think they've ever really done before. Even in the years where they're like, this
yeah,
is all coming by the end of next year, or like most of this is coming by the end of next year. There was always the feeling with everybody that like some of it was definitely feeling far out. 2023, it was base building. 2024, it was space stations. 2020, it was NPCs flying ships around with you on board. You could go through every single year. this was the first year when I saw everything and I was like, that could all be in the game by the end of next year. There's nothing that's too crazy. It
Yeah.
feels like a recalibration to be a little more realistic, to focus more on telling people what they're actually going to be playing, and sticking to the quantifiables, the content, the things that are
Yeah.
more understandable and assurable. Tech demos for features are cool and they get us excited, but that's not what's driving the game anymore, man. It's the regular updates,
Yeah.
the ship sales, the content drops. That's what's keeping people interested in spending money. We're past this period of, look at these cool new features, keep backing us so we can make
Yeah.
them. We're on to this time of like, we're building this game, pay for it. and we'll keep making it so you can see. And so yeah, it feels like a bit of a shift. Not even a bit of a shift, like almost a paradigm shift for the project. And this was just sort of the cap on top of a year-long thing that's been happening.
Good, very good summary. That makes a lot of sense.
My
Yeah.
whole rant.
Yeah. No, it's good. Would you say that as a player of the game and a backer of the game, how would you agree with Jared's statement that this has been the best year for the game?
Hell yeah. Emphatically. And again,
Yeah.
I am obsessed with the features. This was not my choice for the year. Throughout the year I've been saying, at some point we can focus on playability and content, but players are going to start asking for features again. And that was happening by like May.
Yeah, it didn't take long.
I don't think, I think they've done a great thing. It's not what I would have wanted, but I definitely think it's the best the game's ever been. You can easily jump into the game and find something to do if you like content or combat now. And even professions like mining and salvage and cargo hauling are getting updates. It's really, really easy to forget that before 3.18, with the cargo hauling system starting to work, we got like 2 updates to industrial gameplay over the course of like 5 years. Okay, they dropped in
Yeah.
courier packages in 2018, and then mining in 2019, and then mining got like 4 updates throughout the course of the next 4 years. Cargo got no updates, basically. Salvage didn't even exist. Tractor beams only got added midway through there. Like, we were not getting that many updates to any sort of gameplay for a while. So it's easy to look at this year and be like, it was all combat, it was all PvP. But like, this is the first time we were getting voiced missions. This is the first time we were getting storylines. We got a mining update. We got new mining vehicles. We got a salvage update just now. Cargo hauling got its own event. And it's also getting interstellar trade. Like, there's things that are happening in multiple parts of the game, and it's easy to miss those things because there is a lot of focus on combat. But I would absolutely agree that this is the best year for the game so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
And especially with Nick's coming, it kind of almost seals the deal, doesn't it? As in with us all going over to Nick's and doing some mission content in Nick's, fighting some Vanduul. Yeah, that almost guarantees, again, from a playing the game point of view, by far the best year. By far the best year. But yeah, I just, like I've been saying over the last couple of weeks in a few different videos, just the niggle for me is just like, it just doesn't feel like we're charging towards 1.0 in the way that I was hoping we would.
Yeah.
When they said
not
that
this year.
we'd be doing stability, content, performance, all that sort of stuff, and then in parallel we'd be adding in features, I could live with the lack of feature work. But because that hasn't really happened, as Rich himself, he said something like, I wish we'd got in more. They haven't. And so to me, the year's like it's just got a tinge of like a sadness of, it would have been great had we had all the playability stuff, all the content in the game, and if they'd actually done what they set out to do, I think I'd be sitting here feeling really satisfied, thinking they're on it, they're making tons of money, they're going to be able to push forward the game. But until they get to the point where they are doing both in parallel content and then feature development in the EPT or tech preview, I'm a bit like hesitant to say that it's been a perfect year. It's not been a perfect year.
Dude, it
I'd
could
say
have
it's been good.
They got close.
It could have been close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it was just the anxiety I feel like most people are feeling right now. We all see problems that are happening with the development. But in terms of the large picture, the anxiety I think everybody's feeling is basically just that we want the features to still be worked on. It's like they told us they were going to give us a nice hot chocolate with whipped cream on it, and then they forgot the whipped cream. I'm like, this is
Yes.
good, dude, but there's
Good
another
way.
half to it.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. It's the fear is, how we're talking about. Chris was talking about obviously in interviews that I don't know how well translated or whatever, but the idea of coming in 27 or 28, the fear is that it's nowhere near. That's nowhere near accurate, and actually the time to get the features in is going to push it way past 28 into 29 into 30 and into the 30s. That's the fear, is that unless there's a feeling of acceleration on the feature stuff that they've got to do, which clearly is now the biggest job on their list. So if we're saying server meshing, Chris is like, we've finally done it, the major tech hurdle is done. Well, now the big hurdles left are feature work, and
Yeah.
so please get cracking. That's what I hope.
Sorry,
No,
I was just gonna say, even the ship backlog doesn't feel like as big a problem anymore.
no, they've really started making really good progress on that, and so it's just, can you deliver a good version of crafting? Can you deliver base building? Can you get the social tools in? All these things that will take the game from being what it is now, which is something that can be fun and can be a really good time, to being a proper experience with proper tools and proper features and a expansive universe that you can do anything in and everybody loves, and the whole world is like, this is the best game in the world. That I think is what people are after.
Yeah, definitely. All right, man. This has been probably the longest episode of Launch Sequence Podcast we've ever had. So thank you, everybody who sat through this. But I think this was a solid review of the most interesting parts of Inside Star Citizen Direct, and hopefully it gave you guys some insight, or at least got your brains thinking about where the game could be headed based on what we saw over this weekend. I think this was a good event. I think it was disappointing in ways, but that disappointment does not make it a bad event. It just did not include the most important things. Yeah. Any last thoughts on the event overall or the direction of the game?
I think I've probably summed most of it up. Yeah, similar. There's some really good stuff in it, some disappointment, but on the whole, like we're saying, we're probably heading in the right direction overall. It maybe just feels a bit slower on the feature stuff than anything else, but yeah, I think you've said it well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thanks for joining me again for another good episode, dude. Guys, make sure to check out his own content on this. He put out one of the fastest reviews of CitizenCon I think I've ever seen. You want to let people know where they can find more of your videos and talks?
Yeah, so 10Pound42 on YouTube. Normally it is performance stuff, but then sprinkling in more kind of thinking about the game and opinion-based stuff. Very dangerous on the internet. And I normally say, that's enough internet for me. But I have recently started doing a bit of streaming, which is on YouTube and also on Twitch. So come and check that out if you want to hear more.
10 Pound Live.
Yeah.
If you guys enjoyed this show and you are a supporter, whether on Patreon, YouTube, or Twitch, you can always come and join us live. We've got live chat here with the supporters who like to join us. And you can also get just access to the podcast early. It gets recorded on Fridays usually and posted on Mondays. And we like to give our supporters some time to wallow in the copium over the weekend on their own. Next episode is going to be a bonus, so keep an eye out for that. I'll be having Luke Stevens on to talk a little bit about the direction of the game from an outside perspective. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Again, we are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, wherever you get your stuff. If you don't like the YouTube thing, pictures and seeing our pretty faces. But they're so pretty. Anyways, thank you guys for being here. Thanks for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.